over. And this is the first time they've ever seen where everybody's unified.
U.S. President Donald Trump has declared a historic dawn of the new Middle East. This as he and his team received rapturous applause at Israeli Knesset ahead of signing of Gaza peace deal in Egypt.
It's the start of a grand concord and lasting harmony for Israel and all the nations of what will soon be a truly magnificent region. This is the historic dawn of a new Middle East.
Trump called Gaza peace agreement and the release of the hostages held by Hamas a triumph for Israel and the world. The U.S. president thanked mediators from the Arab and Muslim world. He says it's time to translate the victories into peace and prosperity for West Asia.
And let me also convey my tremendous appreciation for all of the nations of the Arab and Muslim world that came together to press Hamas to set the hostages free and to send them home. We had a lot of help. We had a lot of help from a lot of people that you wouldn't suspect, and I want to thank them very much for that. It's an incredible triumph for Israel and the world to have all of these nations working together as partners in peace.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu hailed Trump as the greatest friend Israel has ever had in the White House. He asserted that Israel and the United States are committed to peace as he honored President Trump with Israel's highest civilian honor, Presidential Medal of Honor.
Mr. President, you are committed to this peace. I am committed to this peace. And together, Mr. President, we will achieve this peace.
Israel's leader of opposition, Yair Lapid, lauded President Trump for saving millions from the horrors of war, calling Trump the president of peace. He stated that what U.S. president has done is unimaginable. Lapid said that not awarding Trump the Nobel Peace Prize is a grave mistake by the committee.
When you were elected, you declared that you would be the president of peace. You have kept your word. The fact that you were not awarded the Nobel Peace Prize is a grave mistake by the committee.
Mr. Elijah J. Magnier is a war correspondent and also an analyst. Is now joining us live from Brussels. Mr. Magnier, thank you very much for making time for us and welcome to WION World is One. This is a very important day for the world, not just for Israel and for Palestinians. And we do hear from the President of the United States. He says the war is over and now there needs to be harmony in the Middle East or in West Asia. Do you believe that this harmony will be achieved?
Thank you for having me. Actually, it is very difficult to believe that there is going to be peace in the Middle East after the ceasefire in Gaza. There are so many other elements that are still unresolved, particularly the plan of a greater Israel that Benjamin Netanyahu put forward less than a month ago and said this is his aim to achieve. Therefore, it is not compatible with a peace in the Middle East to have a greater Israel that is going to take part of Syria, part of Lebanon, and a part of Jordan, the West Bank, and no state for the Palestinians. Peace can be achieved when both sides have a peace deal signed, like the Oslo Accord in 1990s, and a state for the Palestinians as stipulated in the Oslo Accord that was supposed to happen in the year 2000, but it didn't.
I think now the next frontier is Iran, and according to President Trump, he says that he wants all to join the accord, the Abraham's Accord. He says that he's hoping for a deal with Iran, but Iran, on the flip side, says that they're not willing to join the Abraham's Accord because they do not trust Israel. How is that going to play out?
I don't think it's a question of trust. I think it's a question of ideology. There is not one chance for Iran to join the Abraham Accord with Israel. Iran has been fighting Israel and vice versa since 1979 when the Islamic Republic was formed. Therefore, this is something that is perhaps a wishful thinking and too ambitious for President Trump to say, but when he is not managing to bring Iran to the negotiation table about the nuclear deal. So going to the Abraham Accord, I think this is a far-fetched stretch.
Mm-hmm. How do you think the region will act now going forward? Because now the peace agreement is going to be signed in a few hours from now because President Trump is headed to Egypt. How do you think this region is going to act going forward?
The Gulf countries were very much willing for a peace deal with Israel and finalize the relationship because first, they don't have a border with Israel. Second, they were already on a track of having good relationship with the Israelis. And here I am not talking only about Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates. On the contrary, Saudi Arabia received many Israeli ministers, even if the peace deal with Israel and Saudi Arabia was not signed, but there were already relationship. Qatar has a bureau of the Israelis since the beginning of 1980s, and there are many Israeli officials visiting Qatar, and the negotiation for peace happening in Qatar. Kuwait is an exception. However, it is always the initiative of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The attack on Qatar pushed back the possibility of peace miles away because this is where the trust has been broken. Mm-hmm. When Benjamin Netanyahu came out and he said he will repeat the attack on Qatar, and then President Trump intervened to say this is the last time that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. The mere fact that it happened once broke the trust. Now, if Benjamin Netanyahu is going to end the war in Gaza, we don't have this answer yet because there are 19 points of the 20 points of the deal, apart from the exchange of all the prisoners that need to be sorted out and are subject to long and painful discussions that have not started yet.
Mr. Magnier, let me expound on that point, the last point there, about the 20-point peace plan. Do you actually think, because there are some skeptics and there are some critics who say that Israel may breach the ceasefire plan, do you actually foresee that happening? And if they do, what is set to happen next?
That's an excellent question. We look at the experience we have seen in the Middle East in the past couple of years. There was a deal of a ceasefire related to the United Nations Resolution 1701 between Israel and Lebanon. Israel violated it more than 4,500 times, and it is still bombing Lebanon on a daily basis, quoting that under the paragraph of the national security. With Gaza, Israel said they want to disarm Hamas, but the mechanism is not there. Israel said that it is going to continue controlling the security of Gaza. Mm-hmm. And we don't know what is the security of Gaza means, because it is normal when you have two sides sitting and with huge distance in between them, the negotiators break the deal into pieces to see what is feasible first. What was feasible first is the exchange of prisoners and stop the war. That is a platform that was common in between both, and both agreed. However, all the other points that are related to security, to deployment of the Israelis said they withdrew to the yellow line, which means they keep 53% of Gaza. And then they said they will withdraw to another red line, but they did not set the timetable and they did not negotiate how this is going to happen and what in exchange of what. And Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't have a record of being trustworthy by his own people in the government, in the security apparatus in Israel, and many politicians believe that he sabotaged any deal like the one with Hamas that could have been achieved in November 2023 and could have been achieved many times in the last 2 years. So really, the ball is in the hand of Netanyahu to decide.
Mr. Magni, I think with all said and done, the big question now is what happens next? And I'm talking about Gaza. There is a lot of talk about who governs Gaza now and who should construct or rebuild Gaza. In your own view, in your own assessment, who do you think should do that job and who should govern Gaza?
On the second point, we all agree that the Gulf-rich, oil-rich countries said they will rebuild Gaza, which means that this point is set on track. However, it has difficulties because there are around 15,000 items that the Israelis consider not allowed into Gaza under the title of double usage, and that will delay an awful lot the reconstruction. Secondly, is when the Israelis will withdraw from the other 53% of Gaza, so the reconstruction and electricity, water, road, because some areas they have no roads. They are completely virgin area, completely flat, no more houses, no more hospitals, schools, nothing. So all that needed topography to reorganize Gaza. But you ask a very good question about who's going to lead Gaza. Now, Hamas agreed not to be part of the leadership in the future, but is not going to melt. It is part of the population and will remain. So the question is, even if a technocrat government leads Gaza, Hamas has a support of a large part of the population. Unless Israel is mature enough to strike a deal like Ishaq Rabin that was killed in 1990s because of the deal of the peace process, if Israel goes to a really peace deal with the Palestinian, this is going to end. But I don't think this is going to be possible, in particular with this far-right wing government that still advertise for the total annihilation of Hamas and the reconstruction of new settlement. Therefore, we need to see if Benjamin Netanyahu is going to call for a election of the new government and a new Knesset, because he has enough popularity to have enough vote in the Knesset to form a new government without the far right. But we know that the Likud party doesn't want a Palestinian state. Right. Therefore, the hope is really on a low level.
Mr. Magni, what about the role that the Palestinian Authority should play in Gaza going forward? Because there has been a lot of criticism on the role that actually the Palestinian Authority can play, having in mind that the presence of Hamas will still be there in Gaza.
I don't think this is a problem, because first Hamas agreed not to rule Gaza, and I think that has been established and this should be done. However, the Palestinian state and Hamas live together in the West Bank. They both exist, but the power is in the hand of the Palestinian state. The problem of giving the authority to the Palestinian state, to President Mahmoud Abbas in Gaza, is something that Benjamin Netanyahu always refused and will continue to refuse, because that means these are indication of the creation of the Palestinian state. And this is why Benjamin Netanyahu in 2019, according to the chief of the Israeli security, has instructed him to allow more than $1.4 billion to reach Hamas from Qatar because he wanted Hamas to be strong and divide the Palestinian state and Hamas, two sides completely separated and not in harmony. So now giving the authority to the Palestinian state or to Mahmoud Abbas in Gaza is something that is incompatible with the objective of the Israeli government, the far-right minister, and to the Likud party. This is why Benjamin Netanyahu will fight against it.
Mr. Magnier, here comes the big question. 67,000 Palestinians have lost their lives in this war. Almost 2,000 Israelis have lost their lives in this war. How does the world move on?
Well, in my experience, I've covered 15 wars so far in my life on the ground, and I think people move on. First, they look after themselves if they are still alive or not. Second, they start asking for services. Third, they look for what remain of their relative to be buried, if they find any. And fourth, they want to reconstruct and their life continue. This is not a problem. The problem is in which conditions the Palestinians will be allowed to live if they are going to have the normal basic human facilities that they were deprived from during the last 2 years when they were demonized, or they will be deprived again and not allowed to have the facilities that every human being should have. For now, they don't have water, electricity, sewage system, hospitals, 28 out of 35 were completely destroyed, no schools, no university. All that needs to be rebuilt, and it's going to take years to achieve that. It's going to take years to remove all the debris. So unless the Israelis allow the Gulf country to rebuild Gaza as soon as possible, it is going to create more hate in Gaza against the Israelis. But if the Israelis are clever enough to allow the reconstruction of Gaza and to allow them to build their school and university, this is where people go toward a new life and don't think about what happened in the past. The Palestinians already lived the Nakba in 1945, and that they went over it.
Mr. Magnier, on the flip side, Israel as a state is afraid that it's going to be isolated by the world. And according to the opposition leader in the Knesset, Yair Lapid, he says that Israel is here to stay, Middle East is our home, and he says Israel is not a genocidal state. What do you think about that?
I don't think the world will approve what he said for a simple reason. The United Nations declared what's happening in Gaza is a genocide. The Israeli can say whatever they want. They can jump on their head. They can say we are the nicest people on earth. But they prove with the film they have put on social media, on live stream, all the crime against humanity and war crime that they have committed, considering all the children responsible and the adult to be killed now before they grow up and become terrorists according to the Israeli society that has been radicalized. I think there is a need of complete change of mentality of the Israelis to consider the indigenous Palestinian who lived on this land with a Jew, that this is not the way to deal with human beings. It is not a question of religion compatible with one another. The Palestinian, Muslims, Christian, and Jew lived together for many centuries. The problem is what Israel wants. If Israel wants all of Palestine, then we don't think anyone is going to believe Yair Lapid, what he said in the Knesset, and it's going to take a very long time for people to forget what Israel did in the last 2 years.
The focus now shifts to Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, where President Donald Trump is headed right now, and he's expected to sign the peace deal. And we do understand that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will be in attendance at this Gaza summit, and also the Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas has also been invited to this summit. So the focus now shifts to that. Mr. Elijah J. Magnier, as always, thank you very much for all your insights and for talking to WION The World today.
Thank you for having me.